Welcome to the deep dive. Usually when we think about the relationship between humans and computers, there's this very clear physical and psychological boundary.
Right, like a master and tool dynamic.
Exactly. You sit on one side of the desk tapping the keys, and the software just sits on the other side, totally inert, waiting for your explicit commands.
Yeah, and we've relied on that binary for decades. I mean, it's comfortable because the human is the only active engine in that entire system.
But looking at the massive stack of updates we've got today from Andrew Kagan's weekly newsletter, random technical news you can possibly use, that boundary is just dissolving in real time.
It really is.
We're sifting through the realities of late April 2026 today. And the biggest takeaway for you, if you're listening, is that AI agents are getting their own persistent identities, their own budgets, and unprompted access to enterprise infrastructure.
Yeah, you aren't just using software anymore. You're basically sharing the desk with it.
Right. And to respect your time today, we're going to structure this deep dive across 8 critical focus areas from the newsletter. We've got Azure, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, DevOps and SRE, data and AI, security and compliance, learning and certifications, and finally, industry trends.
It's a huge list, but the thematic connection here, especially starting with data, analytics, AI, and Power Platform, is that to understand where the enterprise stack is going, you have to look at the brains being deployed.
Right.
And OpenAI's GPT 4.5 is officially generally available in Microsoft Foundry.
Wow, already.
Yeah.
Right.
We're way past experimental endpoints or beta access here.
Yeah.
This is frontier intelligence layered directly into a production-ready enterprise platform.
And the market is responding so fast. Like Google is matching that momentum right now with the rollout of their Gemini enterprise agent platform. We were totally past the phase of, chatbots that just write quirky emails for you.
Oh, absolutely. These are agent platforms designed to execute really complex multi-state operations.
Right, and it's moving beyond text, too. Because in the Power Platform space, Microsoft Copilot Studio is extending AI voice support.
Real-time voice agents.
Yeah, real-time voice.
The latency requirements to make that work are just staggering to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you are not recording a voice memo, sending it off, waiting for speech to text, and synthesizing a response.
No.
Copilot Studio is handling fluid, duplex conversations to just automate business processes on the fly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Having a highly capable, low-latency model is useless if it doesn't actually understand the granular mechanics of your specific company.
Context is everything.
Right. Feeding an LLM without an ontology is like hiring a brilliant executive but refusing to give them an org chart or a company history. I mean, they'll sound incredibly confident while making terrible decisions.
Which is exactly why Microsoft Fabric IQ just introduced the ontology feature. Because up until now, we relied so heavily on vector databases and RG, retrieval augmented generation.
Right.
But vector search just finds text that is semantically similar to your prompt. It doesn't actually understand the logic behind it.
Right. It's just matching patterns.
Exactly. An ontology mathematically maps out your business entities. It defines that, say, a customer has a one-to-many relationship with orders, and orders are constrained by inventory.
So instead of the agent just guessing based on text proximity, Fabric IQ basically hands them the corporate playbook.
Exactly. And the data piping to keep that updated is getting a massive upgrade too.
Right. The Fabric Event Stream SQL operator is now generally available.
Yeah, simplifying telemetry streaming.
But the update I found most mechanically interesting was Fabric mirroring for PostgreSQL flexible servers. It natively includes JSON and JSONB formats now.
That is a massive unblocking mechanism for database engineers. Because JSONB is a decomposed binary format.
Right.
When you store a normal JSON document in a standard text field, the database has to parse that text every single time you query it. It's so inefficient.
Super heavy on compute.
Yeah. But JSONB parses the document once upon insertion and stores it in a binary structure. So by supporting this natively in the mirroring process to OneLake, Fabric can just ingest incredibly complex schemas without hitting the source PostgreSQL database with a massive CPU penalty.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But, okay, feeding an LLM the perfect ontology and mirroring binary JSON is great. But giving these models access means nothing if developers can't actually afford the compute or securely wire them up.
Right. Which brings us to DevOps, SRE, and Microsoft 365. Because developers actually have to build and use these bots.
And it has been an integration nightmare.
Oh, a total nightmare. But the version 1.0 release of the Microsoft Agent Framework signals a real maturation, specifically with these new toolboxes in Foundry.
Yeah, if you've tried to build an autonomous agent to, say, onboard a new developer, you know the pain.
It's awful.
You need the agent to provision an Entra ID account, grant GitHub access, spin up Azure resources, maybe send a welcome message in Teams. That is 5 different tools, 5 different authentication models, and 5 owning teams.
It's like trying to build a car where the engine, tires, and steering wheel all require different security badges to access.
Exactly. But toolboxes in Foundry abstract all of that friction away.
Yeah, a platform team can configure a curated set of tools and just expose them through a single unified endpoint. You apply the governance and authentication at the toolbox level just once.
Right.
And then any authorized agent can natively consume those tools.
And the pricing is finally making sense too. Hosted agents in Foundry are down to roughly 9.9 cents per vCPU hour.
Which is incredibly cheap.
And they're getting cold startup times under 100 milliseconds.
Under 100 milliseconds. Think about that.
Yeah.
They're utilizing massive pools of pre-warmed container environments to do that, because you simply can't have an end user ask Copilot a question and then wait 10 seconds for a bespoke Docker container to spin up.
Right. Nobody would use it. We're also seeing GitHub Copilot shift to a strict usage-based billing model, which honestly makes perfect sense to tie operational expenses directly to actual AI compute.
Yeah, rather than paying flat fees for developers who are on vacation.
Oh, and quick public service announcement for the developers listening. Azure Data Studio is officially retiring.
Yeah, you basically have a 10-minute warning to move your Azure SQL workflows over to VS Code.
So get on that. But back to the compute costs. When you combine usage-based billing with these frontier models, monitoring performance takes on this real financial urgency.
Absolutely. Which is why .NET Aspire is deeply integrating OpenTelemetry now.
I love this feature. So OpenTelemetry tracks bottlenecks, but now .NET Aspire injects token budgets and API consumption right into the trace headers.
That is the crucial innovation here. When an application makes a call, the trace doesn't just say the database took 50 milliseconds. It records that this specific GPT 4.5 interaction consumed 4,000 prompt tokens and 500 completion tokens.
And you pipe that into Azure Monitor or Datadog, and suddenly you see application performance right next to your real-time AI financial burn rate.
Yeah, and the tangibility of that observability is getting so creative. Did you see that VS Live Minecart demo?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So they showed how to visualize these exact OpenTelemetry errors. They literally animated a little minecart full of dynamite rolling into town and blowing up a bank every time a high-cost API error occurred.
It's completely ridiculous, but it perfectly grounds the abstraction.
Yeah.
And that tangibility is reaching end users directly now in Microsoft 365.
Right. Copilot's agentic capabilities are now generally available inside Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. It's not just rendering static files anymore, it's taking multi-step app-native actions.
Manipulating the document structure autonomously.
But, okay, wait, I have to push back here.
Sure.
Because my concern with giving agents autonomy leads right into our security in Azure segment. I was reading through the agent framework updates. Wait. The agent harness allows local shell execution.
It does, yeah.
If an agent can natively draft and run shell commands, what's stopping a hallucinating agent from accidentally formatting a drive or running a recursive delete on a database repository?
I mean, that is the terrifying scenario for any systems admin. But the framework mitigates it at the compiler level.
How so?
The local shell execution runs the drafted command inside an isolated, unprivileged sandbox. But more importantly, it enforces cryptographic, human-in-the-loop approval flows.
Oh, I see.
So the agent can draft the most destructive PowerShell script imaginable, but it physically blocks execution until a human reviews the code and explicitly signs off with their credential.
Okay, let's unpack this. The blast radius on a local machine is contained by human approval. That's good. But look at what happens when these agents hit our cloud directories.
Ah, you're talking about the Silverfort discovery.
Yes. The identity overreach vulnerability. The scoping gap they found in Entra ID blew my mind. So Microsoft introduced this new Agent ID administrator role specifically for AI agents, right?
Right. Yeah, which in theory is a smart move. You want to delegate management without giving someone global admin rights.
Right. But if 99% of organizations have at least one privileged service principal, how did we miss that an agent admin could just hijack it?
It's a huge oversight.
Silverfort realized that someone with only the agent admin role could arbitrarily add themselves as an owner to any high-privileged service principal. Is this just the growing pain of bolting AI identities onto legacy directories?
Mechanically, yeah, that is exactly what happened. It's because of how directory primitives are inherited. The Agent ID platform was built on top of applications and service principles. Because an AI agent identity shares the same core code inheritance as your regular automation principles, the permissions just bled over.
So you could hijack a service principal and instantly get total privilege escalation across the entire Azure environment.
All without triggering an alert for traditional credential theft. Now, to be clear, Microsoft has fully patched this.
Yes, fully patched in April. But it forces a completely new approach to governance, which is why developers are using the new Agent Governance Toolkit for .NET.
Right, with tools like the MIC Security Scanner and the MIC Response Sanitizer to stop prompt injections and exfiltration.
And the intent-aware static inspection for YAML packages, I thought that was brilliant.
It's so necessary. Traditional antivirus just looks for known bad signatures. But YAML isn't executable code, it's a configuration file. A signature scan sees nothing malicious.
Right, but intent-aware inspection actually deduces the behavioral intent. It asks, why is this text summarization agent suddenly requesting to execute outbound HTTP calls?
Exactly. It catches the logical anomalies. And speaking of logical oversight, we have to talk about the 3 Rs of M365 content: governance, readiness, relevance, and resiliency.
Oh, definitely. Because Copilot is essentially a magnifying glass for bad internal permissions.
That's where SharePoint Advanced Management comes in, Sam. They introduced these new data access governance reports, the DAG reports.
Because think about it, if a sensitive HR spreadsheet from 3 years ago was accidentally shared with the Everyone group, nobody noticed before because it was buried.
Right. But today, Copilot will happily read that file and surface it the second an employee asks a related question.
The DAG reports highlight that item-level visibility specifically for everyone permission so you can fix it before AI exploits it.
And on the resiliency side, Azure NetApp Files introduced a free machine learning-based ransomware protection.
Which doesn't just look for file extensions, right?
No, it analyzes the entropy, the randomness of the data being written. When ransomware encrypts a file, data entropy spikes. NetApp detects that, blocks the process, and automatically fires off a storage snapshot so you can recover instantly.
That is incredible. And moving down to the bare metal, Azure Local has expanded to sovereign scale infrastructure now. You can deploy thousands of nodes.
Targeting defense workloads and national security. They enforce this through the Sovereign Landing Zone, or SLZ, with 3 strict levels. Level 1 is data residency. Level 2 is encryption at rest and in transit.
But level 3 is the wild one. Encryption in use leveraging Azure Confidential Computing.
Right. It relies on specialized hardware enclaves. Even if a compromised AI agent gets root hypervisor access, the CPU encrypts the data while it's actively in system RAM.
It's a literal hardware fortress. But, when infrastructure requires hardware-level memory encryption just to run safely, it forces a massive pivot for the humans actually managing it. Which brings us to our final focus area: learning, certifications, and adapting to the future.
Yeah, Microsoft Community Hub just published AI at every career stage. It covers building confidence early, scaling impact mid-career, and coaching at the leadership level.
But the most actionable advice came from John Saville's new video. His advice is uncompromising. IT pros must learn Python.
Yes, generative AI natively writes Python. It's becoming a mandatory language for new Microsoft certifications.
And if you're listening right now and you've spent your whole career relying on GUI interfaces, John Saville's advice to learn Python might sound super intimidating. But think of it less as learning to code from scratch, and more as learning to speak the native language of the AI agents that will soon to your coworkers.
Exactly. You can't audit or troubleshoot an environment if you can't read the code the agent is generating. And speaking of mandatory adaptations, post-quantum cryptography, or PQC,
The transition timeline for this is moving way faster than people think.
standard asymmetric cryptography relies on math that is hard for regular computers, but quantum computers will just shatter it. Microsoft is pushing Phase 3 of the PQC rollout to Windows, Azure, and M365 by 2027.
Next year, IT pros need to inventory their asymmetric cryptography right now. But the juxtaposition here is crazy. We are racing to deploy quantum-resistant algorithms, yet the GAO just flagged 1,032 open security vulnerabilities among defense contractors.
Basic compliance is still a massive struggle. We're building sovereign clouds while struggling to patch basic flaws.
It's a wild disconnect, but we are seeing an attempt to ground things on the consumer side. Windows 11 is shifting its design direction. They are actually retiring the Ninja Cat mascot.
Moving away from the gimmicks.
Yeah, focusing on quality, community, and bringing the soul back to the OS by moving to named human owners for specific features. People are craving that human touch as things get more abstracted.
They really are.
So, just to recap the massive ground we've covered today, we went from GPT 4.5 and Foundry and Fabric IQ's ontology to DevOps toolboxes and Copilot billing. We unpacked Entra ID security flaws, Azure sovereign clouds, and the absolute necessity of learning Python.
It all comes back to that desk metaphor we started with. The barrier is gone. But if we project this forward, we are carefully plotting AI at every career stage for human workers. But as AI agents gain persistent memory, dedicated budgets, and unique identities, how long until HR has to design career paths, performance reviews, and retirement plans for the agents themselves?
Wait, a performance review for a piece of code that's been running your cloud for 3 years? That is wild, but honestly entirely plausible at this rate. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Kagan newsletter. Keep questioning the evolving tech landscape around you, and remember, the next time you sit down at your desk, you are definitely not the only one working there.